This video contains about the pragmatics, which is the subfield of the linguistics. The term pragmatics was first coined in 1930 by an American philosopher, Charles W. Morris. It was developed as a branch of linguistics in the 70s. Some of the most known philosophers in the field of pragmatics was Charles Morris, John Austin, John Searle, Grice, Serper and Wilson, Geoffrey Ledge, Stephen Levinson, and George Yole. So we have the difference between semantics and the pragmatics. So the semantics is the study of the word, phrase, and sentence meaning. So meaning, it only study the meaning of the sentence or the literal meaning of this sentence. While the pragmatic study the utterance meaning or the meaning of how we pronounce the sentences. Either we pronounce it in a sarcastic way or in a lovely way. The semantics is content independent or decontextualized, while the pragmatics context dependent or contextualized. The semantics studies the meaning on sentence level, while the pragmatics studies meaning beyond sentence level. Meaning and pragmatics, it study the meaning of word which is not probably or not usually written on it, or just an interpretation. The semantics focuses on the literal meaning, while the pragmatics focuses on the intended or speaker meaning. So the semantics studies the literal meaning of this sentence, while the pragmatics study the speaker meaning. So semantics focuses on meaning and abstraction, while pragmatics focuses on meaning in use. So we have some example for the difference between semantics and the pragmatics. For example, the speaker said, "It's hot in here." So in semantics or semantically, this sentence means that the temperature in the place where the speaker at is above average or just normal, which is the literal meaning of this sentence. While in utterance or speaker meaning, this sentence possibly mean open the window please, or turn on the aircon, or let's change the room. And there's more. It only depends on the speaker's intention. Also, take note that the same utterance can be uttered in different contexts by the same speaker or different speakers to mean different things. One more example. If the speaker said, "I am sick," so semantically or in semantics, this sentence meaning the speaker is stating that he does not feel well. It has one semantic or literal meaning only. While in utterance or speaker meaning, if uttered in different contexts, it may mean something like, "I need to go home," if it is uttered by the student to teacher. Or "I cannot wash the dishes," if it is uttered by daughter to mother. Or "take me to the doctor," if it is uttered by friend to friend. Or "I cannot come to the party," if it is uttered by person invited by another person. Or etc. Like what I have said, it only depends on the speaker intention. So, the context is the environment in which the utterance takes place, the discourse that surrounds the utterance and helps to determine its interpretation. So we have two kinds of context. Number one is the linguistic context. So linguistic context refers to the words and sentences surrounding any part of a discourse that helps to determine its meaning. For example, in a sentence, she has a nice mole on her cheek. So the word mole, which is an example of homonym, a word that has two meanings, one will not understand its exact meaning unless it is used in a context. So aside from the word mole, the other phrases are all context or the example of the linguistic context because help us to determine the word mole. The word mole can be mean as a pigmented spot, mark, or small permanent protuberance on the human body or skin. It can also be mean as an animal or a small burrowing insectivorous mammal with dark velvety fur. Number two is the situational context. The situational context or context of situation refers to the environment, time, and place, etc., in which the discourse occurs and also the relationship between the participants. So, the place where the discourse occurs as refers to the situational context. Or, for example, in this relationship between the participant, the conversation between a mother and daughter. So, situational context is one of the types of context that influence communication. It deals with appropriate behavior and action associated with the situation. So, each atmosphere has its own set of rules for how to communicate. You would not talk in the same manner in the same situation. For example, at funeral or at wedding. So, we cannot use same manner in this different situation. We cannot say, you may now kiss the bride and the funeral because it is funeral. And we cannot act in a wedding day like how we are acting in a funeral because it is a wedding day and a happy day of two people who love each other, while the funeral is the saddest one because some important people in your life may be passed away. So we have the components of situational context that influences the communication. First is the setting or place, like for example, the home, school, playfield, theater, and etc. Second is the activity. For example, the lecture, discussion, free play, peer share, party, and etc. The third one is the environment, the materials, light, noise, furniture, temperature, number of people, and etc. So, for example, in a classroom, a lecturer creates an imaginary situation to write a story. Example, the robbery of a bank. So, the settings and this discourse is the classroom, while the activity is the writing, and the environment is the material and the number of people. The situational context is defined by the event itself. You communicate differently in different settings. You use differing types and styles of communication in different type of settings. Imagine using the same type of speech in different situations. This would not be appropriate at all. Just like the given example in the previous. So we have pronouns in terms of pragmatics. So it is said that pronouns is a lexical item that can get their meaning from other noun phrase in the sentence or in the larger discourse. Any noun phrase that the pronoun depends on for its meaning is called the antecedent. For example, in a sentence, Mario tried to kill himself. So our noun phrase antecedent is the Mario, while our pronoun is the himself. So as you observe, the pronoun depends on the noun phrase antecedent Mario because we cannot use her because it is understood that Mario is a boy. Kaya magiging iba ang meaning nito or magiging ungrammatical. So have the pronouns and syntax. So there are different types of pronouns. The reflexive pronouns are the pronouns such as herself, themselves, and etc. So for example, in the sentence, Jean beat herself. Number two, Jean said that the boy beat herself. Number three, herself left. So in number one sentence, the noun phrase Jane and the reflexive pronoun herself are in the same sentence. And number two, herself is in the embedded sentence and is structurally too far from the antecedent Jane, resulting in the ungrammatically. And number three, herself has no antecedent at all, hence nothing to get its meaning from. And number four sentence, John knows him. No, number five, John knows that he is a genius. So the sentence and number four is ungrammatical relative to the interpretation because him cannot mean John. Compare John knows himself. And the number five, however, the pronoun he can be interpreted as John. Notice that in both sentences, it is possible for the pronouns to refer to some person not mentioned in this sentence. We also have the pronouns and discourse. So pronouns may be used to refer to entities previously mentioned in discourse or to entities that are presumably known to the participants of discourse. For example, it seems that the man loves the woman. Number two, many people think he loves her. So it is totally ungrammatical because this discourse must win this way. Many people think the man loves the woman because the most natural interpretation for the pronoun her is the woman, but it can also be referred to another person. Similar with he, we can understand or identify who he and her if you use pointing gesture. For example, many people think he loves her. Nakaturo ang ating kamay sa taong tinutukoy natin. Yan lang ang isang paraan upang maintindihan or ma-identify natin ang tinutukoy sa isang sentence kapag gumamit tayo ng pointing gesture. The pronouns and situational context. So when a pronoun gets its reference from a noun phrase antecedent in the same sentence, we say that the pronoun is bound to that noun phrase antecedent. For example, in sentence number one, Mary thinks he loves her. Refers to Mary, it will be a bound pronoun. Pronoun can also be bound to quantifier antecedents such as every, as and the sentence. And number two sentence, every girl in the class hopes John will ask her out on a date. In this case, her refers to each one of the girls in the class and said to be bound to every girl. Reflexive pronouns are always bound when a pronoun refers to some entity outside the sentence or not explicitly mentioned in discourse. It is said to be free or unbound, so her and the sentence number one and number two need not be bound to Mary or to every girl and can also refer to some arbitrary girl. So we have dixes in terms of pragmatics. Dictic words are interpreted in terms of what person, thing, or time the speaker has in mind, and as interpreted in terms of what is close to the speaker. Example number one: move this from here to there. It means move an object from a point close to the speaker to a point far from the speaker. And example number two: take this dish to the kitchen. So this utterance tells about the place of the speaker, which is he or she is not in the kitchen because he is probably in somewhere. We have tenses and dixes. Tense can be used as dictic terms to point to past time, present time, and future time. Examples: I lived in New York for 3 years. So it is past tense pointing to the past time. And number two, I live in New York. So it is present tense pointing to present time. And number three, I will live in New York for 3 years. Future tense pointing to future time. We also have the maxims of conversation. Grice's maxims of conversation are a set of observations that describe how people communicate when they want to be properly understood by others. You can use these maxims as guiding principles to make your communication as effective as possible. We have the four maxims of conversation. Number one is the maxim of quality. So we should speak truthfully and never contribute false belief. So in stating an information in a conversation, there is no need for us to say a false belief or that is not suitable for your answer to the person that questioned you. For example, George failed his exams. He is very smart. So, in this conversation, the one that violate this maxim is the highlighted words. The words, he is very smart because it is said in a sarcastic way or expressing lies. Number two is the maxim of quantity. So, in this maxim, do not contribute more or less than required information. It must be balanced. For example, if someone asks you, what did you do yesterday? So you should tell to someone what exactly that you did start to finish with no additional details and not leaving any important. You must answer, I woke up, I did swim ashores, I went bed. That's all the end. There's no need to make it too long to avoid violation of the maxim. Another example. Do you know if Kate gotten okay with her exam? Speaker A. Yes, I do. She did really well and got an A. The speaker B. So here, the speaker B could have ended their reply after, yes, I do. Number three is the maxim of relevance. So in this maxim, you need to be relevant. For example, in speaker A, how did he sing? Speaker B, he looked wonderful. So what Speaker B said is irrelevant because we are actually talking about singing. So how come it says he looked wonderful? What is being answered is not related or relevant to the question that is being asked. Number four is the maxim of manner. So in this maxim, we need to avoid ambiguity and obscurity. We must be brave and orderly. For example, I am writing an essay on metonymy. It is a type of figure of speech. Here, the speaker knew that it was possible that the listener would not know the term metonymy and decided to give a quick or clear information to avoid obscurity or ambiguity. So we also have the implicature, entailment, and presupposition and the terms of pragmatics. So the implicature study the hidden meaning of the sentence or discourse. For example, did your gym close down? This sentence is an example of implicature because it has a hidden meaning. It can be mean that, oh my god, she's very fat. Or that is what you usually mean in your mind. And example number two. She is a very nice teacher. So this sentence can be mean that she's a terrible teacher, but you can tell it directly, so you use an implicator. The entailment. So if a sentence A entails a sentence A cannot be true without B being true as well. So in example number one, in A, Pat is a fluffy cat. And B, it is said Pat is a cat. So A entails sentence B, so it is true as well. Both information by sentence A and sentence B are all true. And example number two. In sentence A, it is said the president was assassinated. And sentence B, the president is dead. So the A entails B. So it is also true information because it is possible for the president to be dead after being assassinated. So the presupposition. So a presupposition is a shared background knowledge between the speaker and the listener. An example number one, have you stopped smoking? So the presupposition here is the listener used to smoke. Because you say, Have you stopped smoking? So it is understood that the listener used to smoke before. In example number two, it is said, I am going to visit my brother in Canada. So the presupposition here is the speaker has a brother and he lives in Canada. And example number three, it is said, I regret doing that to my girlfriend. So the presupposition here is the speaker has a girlfriend and he has done something bad to her. Because the word regret indicate it.